How many of you guys heard about the Ghost MMO, Ghostcrawler's new MMO? So they recently showcased this game, and it was when I was off stream. They invited Co-Carnage, Joe Cat. I'm not familiar with Joe Cat, I'm not familiar with Juno, but you guys all know Josh Drive Hayes. And I was watching this via Josh and Co-Carnage's streams. They were showcasing the game, and I'll be honest, for a Western game, the combat, again, this is very early. Guys, you have to keep in mind, this is 18 months into development. 18 months. So for those of you who are not aware, let me give you a little bit of background info. Ghost is a new MMO that's coming out and being developed by Ghostcrawler and his quote-unquote team. Ghostcrawler is widely known to be a pretty well-respected game dev slash game lead guy. He worked with Blizzard. He was originally the guy leading the project for Riot's new MMO. And then he left for family personal reasons, and like a day later he announced that he was doing this. So you guys fill in the blanks there, but this is his project he's doing. I believe it's being backed by NetEase. I have had an interview with Ghostcrawler directly. You could look up that video on my YouTube. But Ghostcrawler, essentially him and his team, they secured a deal with NetEase, who's backing the project. And according to Ghostcrawler from that interview, he told us that NetEase is hands off, totally up to you guys. You guys just let us know what you guys need, and it's up to you. Monetization, all that stuff is going to be controlled by this team. So it kind of sounds like an NC Soft ArenaNet type of deal, which is pretty cool. Obviously, I have no way of fact-checking anything. This is just based off the conversation that I had with Ghostcrawler, and Ghostcrawler seems to be a pretty honest and transparent dude. Anyways, Ghost is this new project that's coming out, and they've got like an all-star team that's designing it. And this is the first time we've been able to see gameplay, like real gameplay footage. Right? We've seen some concepts and super early, clips, whatnot, but this is the first time we've seen people go into the game, streamers in this case, actually play it. And I must say, Teimu Animations, I think, again, 18 months into development for this, I think this looks, gameplay-wise, art style-wise, combat, I think it looks great. I think it looks fantastic. Again, you have to understand, 18 months into the development, right? I actually really like the art design. I might get roasted for this, but for whatever reason, I kind of got subtle Wildstar vibes. Maybe it's because of just the colors and how vibrant some of the things are, right? But there are a lot of good things. There are a lot of things about this game that are pretty interesting to me, that I am pretty excited about. Kind of like for example, the class design. And watching it, there are like counter mechs and parry counter mechanics, parry mechanics. Again, 18 months. The combat looked pretty good for what it is. And yeah, they've gone through this whole open development system. However, my big concern with this is this blue shard, red shard system. Like I said, it's very early, and there's a lot of things that they're taking feedback from. So a lot of the smaller, a little bit less significant things, the polish, whatever, these things I think can be easily touched up on, especially with how much time they have. However, they are embracing this blue shard, red shard concept that is very core to the game. And that is something that I'm concerned about, because it is a core part of the game, right? And when we're talking about core fundamentals of the game, it can be difficult to pivot from, even if it is relatively early into the development. This is, I feel like, something, if they decided to pivot from, it would set back the project quite a bit. I don't know, maybe. I don't know anything about game development, but I would be I am concerned about this, because not only am I not sold on the design and concept of blue shards and red shards, which I'll explain here in a minute. As someone that is ignorant to game development, I just feel like them fully embracing and full committing to this type of concept, it seems like it would set them behind quite a bit. For those of you who are curious as to what this blue shard, red shard system is, it is essentially two different worlds. The red shard is the MMO world. What we know, what we're familiar with in MMOs. Massively multiplayer online, raid bosses, world bosses, all that stuff. Blue shards are a little bit more, I don't want to say private, but multiplayer lobbies. So you go in there either solo or with a party, and it's like, and the way they have their blue shards is it's almost like a roguelike RNG. I say RNG, maybe that's just a word I'm looking for. Randomly generated world, right? It's changing every time. There is permanent progression from the blue shards that you take over with you to the red shards, but there is a roguelike system involved within the blue shards, which I believe is what they're doing right now. There's some building and whatnot, and they said it is a very core part of the game. Blue shards, red shards. I don't like that. I'm not a big fan of it. Personally, when Ghostcrawler was explaining this to me, I wasn't really sure if I was understanding it right, because when your game is designed in such a way where a big part of the game is not within a massively multiplayer online world, I feel like that in and of itself strips away from it being an MMORPG, right? Here's an example, which unironically is also a game developed by NetEase, I believe. Whereins Meet. Whereins Meet has like this MMO mode and then like a single player online co-op mode kind of thing, right? Where they're separated. In the MMO mode, you can enter a lobby with a bunch of people, world bosses, events, all that stuff. And then, you can do your world exploration in a private, separate world. And anyone that has played Whereins Meet will tell you it's not your traditional MMO. And a lot of people that watch it and have been following it will also tell you not everyone, but a lot of people will tell you that it doesn't really feel like a true MMO. And for me, right, I'm concerned about Project Ghost because I want it to be an MMO, but this blue shard, red shard system, maybe it is good, maybe it is fun, and and for sure there are some pros to it, but it just doesn't feel like a real MMO, right? To me, because you're separating the massively multiplayer online world. I want to enter in a world where it is a world. It is a single world, within that server at the very least, where you are joined by thousands of players in real time. That to me is a fundamental necessity for an MMO to be an MMO. This is why I'm kind of critical of a lot of games these days that are slowly becoming more lobby simulators. I also think that's a big part of the reason why a lot of the classic games are becoming a little bit more popular. Not completely, not entirely because of this fact, but partly due to the fact that a lot of these classic MMOs did kind of embrace the massively multiplayer aspect of it. More so than some of the recent games that are incorporating a lot of instance content. Not that instance content is bad. Of course, instance content was that was present in classic games. But, like the whole mobile, element and console element that kind of limits the world. So, yeah, like for me, that is my biggest concern. And if I gave feedback to this team, it would be to really consider how they're going about separating the massively multiplayer world with the non-massively multiplayer world, which I would say is more of like a co-op world, especially when a lot of the gameplay and a core part of the game is to be spent in the online co-op world, which is this blue shard thing. I understand that dungeons exist, and you could argue that Lost Ark doesn't feel a game like Lost Ark, which is essentially a party finder simulator, isn't a true MMO by that category. And I would say you're right. I actually use Lost Ark as an example of this quite a bit. A lot of games, modern games these days, really start to focus on, hey, end game content. People are doing dungeons and raids anyway. Let's just focus on that, right? I want to play a new game, a new MMO that is truly open world. We're all in a single world, thousands of players in that world, and we just feel immersed into that in that world. And I feel like having a blue shard, red shard system takes away from that. to the point where I really feel like it's going to not feel like I'm playing a real MMO. Ghostcrawler did mention that they are targeting the MMO audience, and I think this is very important. That's why I wanted to add this part in, because they want to not only appeal, but want to be accepted by the MMO audience. That is their target audience. And I believe Ghostcrawler in this little showcasing went as far as to say that their target audience is the Western MMO audience. You know, the people that are into Guild Wars 2 and old school RuneScape and World of Warcraft. Their game they're trying to deliver is, in fact, an MMORPG. They are not trying to do a hybrid. They're just trying to create something unique that they think is... They're just trying to create something unique, something they feel like would be good in the MMO space, but within that MMO space, right? For as far as what I could gather, they want to deliver an MMO. So that's good, because if this blue shard, red shard system really feels like it's not an MMO and it gets rejected by the MMO community, I think there is a good chance they could, at the very least, revisit and reconsider, redesign this system. I really think they should just scrap this system and just give us one. I would prefer them to do the opposite. Give us a mega server, kind of like how Guild Wars 2 does it, where there's just one single NA server and one single EU server. I think that would be sick. But yeah, I think that is important context, because you know, they are trying to deliver an MMO, and if we, the community, give them the feedback that, hey, we are really not feeling this blue shard, red shard system, yeah, I do think there's a good chance they could scrap it, but at the very least revisit it and consider redesigning it.